There is no way you can pick up these things from a modern university. There's no way you can pick up these things from books on your own, because the probability of error is very high. And the possibility of being misguided is higher and higher. If you sit with books and read with books, as I said from the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down a human being and a book together, both a combination. And it would have been very difficult for us to receive the book without having a guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have sent down an angel on the face of the earth, but it was only for the case of the unbelievers. They argued, how come that Allah didn't send down an angel? Allah answered the challenge by saying, وَلَوْ جَعَلْنَاهُ مَلَكًا لَجَعَلْنَاهُ رَجُلًا وَلَلَبَسْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مَا يَلْبِسُونَ. Allah sent down a human being like us. He is made of light, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, as in the hadith, although weak, of Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. But it's a good reference for the form of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala and from which he was created, as a perfect example for us to follow, to emulate, but through his heirs, through the people who received the knowledge from him, and then people who sat with them, people sat with them, people sat with them, and this applies on every discipline. I gave you the example of the Hanafi school. If you look at the Hanafi school and its chain, you see all connected to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. What Abu Hanifa says is not something he had from his own knowledge. Something he narrated from his teachers. A knowledge he inherited. The Hanafi school is the summing up of the school of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala an. His opinions in general, most commonly, and his opinions, what he received from the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And if you look at the testimony of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about him, رَضِيتُ لِأُمَّتِي مَا رَضِيَهُ لَهَا ابْنُ أُمِّ عَبْدٍ. I am satisfied with what Abdullah ibn Mas'ud selects for my ummah. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam says, then you would know the origin of the Hanafi school. The same applies. Imam Malik, Nafi' and several other scholars of Al-Madinah, from Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar, several other Sahaba of Al-Madinah, from the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i, from Waki', from Ata and Ikrimah, and many students of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, and others from Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, and other Sahaba from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. These are the chains of fiqh. The chains of hadith are different because the narration is of words. Because here you have to narrate words of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And this is the miracle here that Ibn Hazm highlighted, that in Isnad خصيصة من خصائص هذه الأمة. If you go to the Bible, what they call the Bible now, you'll find the mixture of the divine words, as they claim, and the words of the prophets themselves, Musa, Isa alayhim as-salam, and words of their students. So we have a mixture of narrations put all together, written later, 100 years after Isa alayhi salam was elevated to the heavens. So the case of Islam is different. The Qur'an is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one single letter was added to it. No one single letter was omitted from it. It is now as it was revealed upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Not only in its contents, but also in its orthography. The way it is written. Rasmu al-Mushaf. The way it is written. Sometimes ta' mabsuta, sometimes ta' marbuta. It's tawqifi. Rasm al-Qur'an, the way it is written. The order of it. From al-Fatiha to al-Nas. From al-Hamdu to min al-Jinnati wal-Nas. All of it. Also as it was revealed upon the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala by order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Put this verse in that surah. Put this surah before the surah or that surah. Jibreel used to come with the divine commands to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Nothing was altered. The major method of the narration of the Qur'an is oral, as it was in the case of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. The hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is narrated separately. And aqwal al-sahaba, the words of the sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, which is also one of the source of legislation, also narrated separately. It is very important to have some idea of the science of hadith, the methodology of hadith, mustalah al-hadith, to know how this hadith altogether is authenticated. And how the ulama filtered the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam to know the sound hadith, the good hadith, the weak hadith, the hadith that is made up, and the difference between narrators, all narrators, in their ranks, in their righteousness, in their preciseness, in the way of memorization of hadith, and to put everything and find the diseases or the weaknesses and the illas in every hadith. We have thousands and thousands of volumes that the ulama wrote down on the words of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Altogether, probably, we have around 100,000 hadiths, around 100,000 pieces of tradition, hadith narrated from the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and the ulama wrote down and narrated from each other through these chains of transmission. Imam al-Bukhari, student of the student of Imam Malik, he narrates in his Sahih by wasita from some of the students of Imam Malik. But the ulama agreed that Imam al-Bukhari put together the soundest book of hadith. That is to say, the hadiths he included are the soundest, but not the only soundest. This is very important to understand here. Later on, scholars such Imam Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, for example, wrote down in their books, in their Sahih. Imam ibn Hibban came later. Imam al-Hakim came in his Mustadrak and wrote down also several hadiths that are sound but not included in Sahih al-Imam al-Bukhari. The Ummah gave a lot of attention, a lot of care to the books of hadith, and the top of them is Sahih al-Imam al-Bukhari. And we narrate Sahih al-Bukhari nowadays with the shortest chains of transmission to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Imam Bukhari, although he died year 256 of al-Hijrah, but he had 3 narrators between him and the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam in the highest isnads and shortest isnads. 22 hadiths are known as Thulathiyat al-Imam al-Bukhari. Thulathiyat al-Imam al-Bukhari, 22 hadith he narrated through Salama ibn al-Akwa radiyallahu ta'ala an. Between al-Imam al-Bukhari and our time, we have Isnad that are narrated through scholars who met each other. We have up to 14 generations. And with Imam Bukhari, they become 15. With 3 between Imam Bukhari and the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, we have 18 generations between us and the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam through Thulathiyat Imam al-Bukhari with the shortest isnads. And you can see now how much the science of hadith summed up for us. How many centuries, how many generations the science of hadith and the narration of hadith brought us closer to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.